Eat weed, urinate outdoors on garbage cans in public, masturbate and drink on the job. Still not fired. What is the worst thing that you've seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? My favorite bro is back for another story time, so glad you made it. Your boy Andrew here narrating another story time. Since you've made it this far, can you hit that like button? It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do, I'll go ahead and send you some edibles. Thanks for doing that. Anyway, let's start these stories. Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details back statements from one company to their direct competitor. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door, but the owner is so ancient and out of touch, I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. A guy at the plant I work at scrapped $360,000 in airplane parts because he didn't even bother to look at the work instructions. He just drives a forklift now. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and had the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I am that guy. AMA. Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company, and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. Nothing? Documenting work as completed when no actual work had been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or reprimand. Eventually, management changed, figured out no work was being done, called it fraud, and canned them. The job was easy too, and good money. I don't get why they didn't just do the work. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. Stole a bunch of marked tools, they were painted white. Showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with said tools in the background. Gets reported, boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me, I stole a gallon of white paint." Never heard the boss laughing so hard. Year later or so he gets promoted, lol. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as HR and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. Got caught with CP on his work computer. Had access to the net, taken away, but wasn't fired as it's possible he didn't know it was real CP. Edit. Just to clarify a few things. This was about 15 years ago at a public institution in Canada. CP is child PRN. Upper management was terrible in so many ways. I talked to a friend who was in the RCMP. She said to me reporting him would lead to the institution lawyering up and an internal investigation would happen. That's all because likely upper management erased the HD and left no paper trail. See number 3. He used Kazit, an ancient P2P. Obligatory, not me but my wife. She had a co-worker that literally punched a customer, wasn't fired. He later got into a physical altercation with another co-worker, wasn't fired. Then he wrapped my wife's hair around her throat and play choked her. Still was not fired. Finally, he got into yet another altercation with a co-worker and pulled a gun on him, all while on the clock. Then he was fired. Had a co-worker as a standard business practice falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure homeowners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I couldn't do anything as I had no direct proof, but he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the poop out of him. I ended up working for that second company and haven't looked back. I work in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days, assuming all was well. All was not well at all. The dehumidifier crapped out while the plants were being hung to dry and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point every single plant was coated in mold and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note. I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now and I'm mad all over again. His only punishment was to be denied moving to day shift, but other than that it was forgotten about. Full-on sexual harassment. Little backstory. I work in a private country club-style dining banquet event space. A drunk-on-the-job manager pinned an hourly server against a wall during a nighttime wedding reception. She punched him in the ribs and tried pushing him off of her. We all saw it. We all reported to HR. Another manager physically removed him off of her. This was about 4 months ago and he's still in his position. She quit due to him telling everyone she'd lied about the entire situation. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send dick pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop or they'd take it up with management and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it, and my wife went to management with everything and said this guy's out or I'm quitting. Well, she quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline Instant Oil Change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously, I never saw him again. Edit. I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. Edit number 2. I'm very sorry that I misspoke. I was an assistant to the manager. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing crap when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it, and said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews, despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. Had a boss storing pictures of himself in only his white open bathrobe on company servers. It was reported to HR but wasn't fired for it. Later he was arrested as part of an undercover sting where he thought he was meeting a 15-year-old girl about 500 miles away. Way too many questions comments to reply to all of them. More details? The images were stored in a shared folder used by a few employees. The guy was our manager, so he should have known better than storing them there. Assuming the pictures were taken using a work camera because digital cameras were very expensive at that time and the company had a few. Before he left for the weekend to meet the girl, he had asked to use the digital camcorder I had for work. He told me he needed it to make a video of his home possessions for insurance purposes, but I was suspicious of that, so I told him I needed it for work. We found out he was arrested when he called the computer room collect from jail. This was later in the evening when he no-showed for work that day. We didn't accept the charges but called back later to see what he was charged with. At that time we were told solicitation of a minor, but the whole details came out later when he was on the local news station. Telemarketing co-worker was very obviously a psycho or sociopath. Showed up late every shift by definition, had quite a temper with authority, but would often just cause trouble out of boredom, by his own admission. The most controversial thing he did one particular day was address every client he spoke to by the N-word. Once the manager heard him, he yelled at him outside for 20 minutes, and that was the end of it. A week later, this co-worker denied it had ever happened before, going on a tangent about how he liked to start arguments with his girlfriend just to see her cry. Ducking sociopath. Edit. Gonna tack on a reply I posted here because it seems to have gotten buried. He pronounced it with an R harder than a priest in a room full of altar boys every time. Hey, an apostrophe R. We're generic window and door company. Buy from us. I've studied psychology, and the current opinion seems to be that psychopaths are born with the lack of empathy. Sociopaths learn to lose their empathy because of their life situation. TBH, I'm not sure why he wasn't fired, and if I had been manager at the time, I certainly would have fired him on the spot. It was a super lax job though. One of the best typical first job environments you could ask for. Think workaholics with a much smaller office, but the manager liked to pal around with us, too. We all used silly names and tried to goof around in harmless Super Troopers fashion, but this one guy just didn't care where the line was and took everything too far. Thanks for watching. What did you think of the story time? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more story times.